Good morning, everyone. We're talking about some folks that have done a lot of dancing in their lifetimes. Here in our AM Minnesota program, they've danced up in the sky, too, with airplanes. They've been involved with the Civil Air Patrol, and I've got just very little knowledge about the Civil Air Patrol, so I'm looking forward to learning more about the Civil Air Patrol. Of course, we got a couple of congressional gold medal winners, thanks to their support of the Civil Air Patrol and their participation in it during World War II. Dr. Roy Anderson, who's written some books on the Straight River, is with us today. Hi, Dr. Roy.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming by. I certainly appreciate it very much. And the name, correct me if I'm wrong, the name of one of the books is The Not So Straight River, right?
The Saga of the Not So Straight
The
River.
Saga of the Not So Straight River. And you had a follow-up to that book coming up. Just need you closer to that mic if I could, please.
Working on another book about the Cannon and Straight Rivers with
Oh,
some
okay.
other people.
It'll be very interesting.
Thank you.
Very interesting read. If you've never read the saga to the Not So Straight River, I forgot the saga part, but we've had you on the show talking about that in the past. So let us know when the new book comes out, will you?
Yes, we will.
Who's this lovely lady sitting to your right?
Oh, this is Carol.
I'm Carol Springmeyer.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
I am just fine. And how about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. And your father got one of these
Yes.
gold medals.
Willard Stewart Shaft.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, please. Were you involved in the CAP at all? Did you
No,
ever
I was a little young at that time. I think about 6 years old, and I didn't have much of a connection with the Civil Air Patrol at that point. And my brother, who could not be here, Stuart, had a little bit more knowledge of it than I did. But I've become to appreciate what they did for our country.
Boy, and they certainly did. We're going to talk more about that. Liz Strophus, I think everybody on the planet knows who Liz Strophus is, at least. It's okay. In these particular parts, microphone came out of its holder. Liz, you were, of course, a woman air service pilot, right? A WASP?
Well, I was in the Women's Air Force Service pilot. Before that, I was with Willard Stewart Shaft. He was in charge of our group there in Faribault. We used to meet down at the Armory every Monday, and we'd march, and that's where I learned the shorthand, the Morse code,
Yeah.
and I used that in my service because we used it in our instrument flying. So I did appreciate that. Yes, and I enjoyed very much working with the Civil Air Patrol. We used to have bags filled of flour, but we had stones at the bottom so they'd fall. We had a great big circle, and then outside the town, and then we'd take turns dropping bags, and that was supposed to be bombs.
And you had to hit the target.
Yeah.
Yes, I never did hit the middle.
Okay, you never hit the middle. It's a good thing you weren't a bomber then.
Yeah.
Well, Archie Temple is with us as well. I suppose you guys, well, I guess that'll work.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm Archie Temple, and I guess I'm here because my father was flying. He completely enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it too. One of the things he used to do, he would close the engine down, open the doors, and he'd yell at his farmers who were his customers. And one time I was with him, and it seemed like we used to get lost in those days a little. And
Okay.
he had to yell. It was probably where's Faribault, and there was about 10, 12 people down there, and they all pointed in the same direction at the same time.
Isn't that interesting? And of course, also with us today is Colonel Kevin Slawinski. And what is your title, Colonel? You got so many medals on your chest. Unbelievable.
I am the Government Relations Officer for the Minnesota Wings Civil Air Patrol.
Which means you are in charge of this program?
I got involved in the program because I was part of the, I go to do the government relations with the federal government and the state government, particularly Congress and the legislature here.
Sure. Carol's dad, Roy's dad, both received the gold medals. Obviously, you know, they're no longer with us. Archie's hoping to get his dad one. And Liz has 2 of these gold medals, and she also received, she's in the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame, and then a lot more awards, too. We'll talk more about that when AM Minnesota continues. By the way, I just checked before we hit the airwaves this morning. My eyes have really been itchy lately. I thought it was because I had this cold and it was settling in my eyes.
Mhm.
Actually, we got a high pollen alert today in Faribault. High pollen alert. So if that bothers you, just wanted you to know we have a high pollen alert. Before I go any further, though, we need to visit with Colonel Kevin Slawinski. Colonel, I did have to ask you why they had to wait so long for these people to get these medals. I mean, they really didn't get to enjoy them, the parents of Carol and Roy here.
The Congress has proposes their proposals to Congress for the gold medals. Civil Air Patrol started working at getting this gold medal back in before 2011, about 5 years ago. They had a member of Congress who was willing to or would present into Congress a bill to get these people recognized. The bill, all 10 members of the Minnesota congressional delegation were co-sponsors for the bill. And it didn't make it through that 2 years of Congress. It got, therefore, was reproposed back in 2013 and did get passed in 2014. And that's when it was recognized. They have to be recognized by Congress. And there are many organizations, for example, the WASPs, which is Betty's first gold medal.
Right.
They were recognized a couple of years before Civil Air Patrol was. They were basically they were on active duty, and Civil Air Patrol, of course, is a volunteer effort. So it's taken Congress that long. There are numerous gold medals that are enacted by Congress from the past. George Washington, I think, being the first one, if I remember correctly from the list. And it just takes a while for Congress to pass the bills.
So 70 years after the war, basically,
Yes.
before these individuals got recognized. And Archie, let's hear your story again. You'd like to have your father get one of these because he was involved in Civil Air Patrol during World War II.
Yeah, I suppose it's been quite a while now, so he just thought he enjoyed flying, I guess.
Were you involved in Civil Air Patrol yourself?
No.
Did you ever go out flying with your dad?
Oh yeah.
But you had no interest in actually.
I remember one time that I'm repeating myself. We took a flight, and we were flying so low that I could count the robins and nests in the trees. And
Oh my word!
and I was real happy about that because I like to fish, and I had taken my fish pole with me. We would have to go back when we started. Well, he took a couple more looks, and he said, "Well, I guess we'll make it." That was the end of it.
Yeah.
Away we went.
Oh my word!
That's
I would assume, Colonel, that you flew in the Civil Air Patrol too.
Yes, I did for quite a few years.
Yeah.
I was active duty Air Force, retired from the Air Force, and I was in Civil Air Patrol and the Air Force at the same time.
For those who don't know, and I probably got ahead of myself here, I do that quite often. Get ahead of myself. We probably should, for those who don't know listening, what is the Civil Air Patrol?
The Civil Air Patrol is a corporation, civilian corporation by act of Congress. Congress incorporated us back in 1941, December 1st, 1941. And it was for volunteers, and basically the purpose was, as Betty had said earlier, the Air Force was building, the Army Air Force was building up, needing pilots to fly over in Europe, and therefore there was a fear that we couldn't accomplish the tasks that those pilots did in the United States. Also the fear that when a war came along, they were going to stop all civilian flying in the States for fear of terrorism, which now we know what goes on with terrorism. And so therefore they wanted to have an organization that could fill in for the pilots that were going overseas. And Civil Air Patrol was part of that plan.
So Congress developed this.
It was a group of members of pilots that were involved with the government that did create it.
And let me guess, it was not funded.
Uh,
I mean, it's free, like, I mean,
Well-
the pilots don't get paid.
pilots do not
They use
get
their
paid.
own aircraft.
They use their own aircraft. It's all volunteer, benevolent corporation. They do get paid when they're on a mission. They get paid for their gas and oil, and if they fly a corporate airplane, their airplane costs are covered too. The maintenance costs are covered.
Okay. Civil Air Patrol is in existence today.
Yes.
In fact, I remember when I was in North Platte, Nebraska, of course we're talking over a quarter century ago now, the Civil Air Patrol was very active there. And Dr. Anderson was telling me the other day that we've had a very active Civil Air Patrol here in Faribault in the past anyway.
Years ago, it currently does not have, but there is a squadron in Owatonna.
There's that Owatonna.
There is a squadron in Owatonna, and there is one up in Lakeville.
And they're active.
They are active.
What these folks do, at least they did in Nebraska, if a plane came up missing, they go search for it.
That is affirmative.
That's basically what they do now.
Yes. Well, they have other missions in addition to that, particularly youth or a cadet program for youth. That's one of our biggest portions of our mission. Our mission is emergency services, Civil Air Patrol, cadet program, and aerospace education to the general public.
Okay. Carol,
Yes,
I just need you to leave.
all right.
Like
there I
over
am.
by Carol there. How did you find out about this?
From Liz. My father was actually there. But there's some fun stories about my father. He always wanted me to fly, and of course, as a young girl, I was way too busy. But he would love to take me up in the airplane, and since he did teach the acrobatic flying, he would take me up and put his glasses on the dash, put the nose of the plane straight up in the air, and go a distance and then come straight down, and the glasses would float right toward me. And I'd always say, do it again, do it again.
Wow, that was
And
better.
that was fun.
That was better than any ride at the fair.
That's what it was.
Absolutely.
He was one of Faribault's pioneer pilots and instructors, and he was instrumental in organizing the Faribault Pilots Club, and he played a leading role in the development of the Faribault Airport. So he was a U.S. Navy flight instructor during World War II, and like I said before, he taught the aerobic flying.
Well, you are appropriately proud of your dad.
Oh,
can
I
tell.
certainly am. And my brother, who could not be here, is equally as proud.
And you should be. And I understand, Liz, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I shouldn't say that because you will. If I'm wrong,
Yes, she will.
correct me. But her dad was one of the reasons why you started flying, right?
Yes, her dad was very instrumental in my belonging to the Civil Air Patrol because he was, whatever they call the person, head of the squadron.
Squadron commander.
Yeah, that's what they call him. And he was a squadron manager, and he was very good. He saw that all of us got down to the place where we marched. I sure learned how to march. I didn't learn much of anything else, and also the what do you call it? Well, anyway,
Taxi,
pardon?
taxi,
No, I learned the.
instruments.
Morse code.
That's okay. I learned to do that, and it helped me in the service. It helped me with my instrument flying. We had
Morse code, I think.
Morse code,
Yeah.
and we had thanks. And it was a wonderful, wonderful time. It was a wonderful time to fly. I tell you, I'd get lost. I could go down and look and see where I am, see the name of the town, and I'd get my map out and find out where I am. That was a great time to fly.
You see, nowadays, these commercial airliners pretty much fly themselves, you know.
Pardon me?
It's all computers nowadays.
Yeah. Well, it's all computers now, and that's fine. But I'm glad it was the age of when they first started flying because I had a wonderful time. I loved to fly. And it broke our hearts when we couldn't fly anymore. And then to seal our records, nobody knew that I could fly all those airplanes. I was a co-pilot of B-17 4-engine bomber. I was a co-pilot of a B-26, a twin-engine bomber. I flew the only fighter plane we had, oh, I tell you, we just got in the airplane, took it up and found out what it did. It was a wonderful time to fly.
And didn't you go to Duluth back in, I think it was 91 and fly an F-16?
I was only 72.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When I flew with this fellow, I think I was one of the first women to fly in an F-16. And this fellow was such a wonderful person. He's a good friend of mine now. He's now a general, General
Wow.
Pulaski. Yeah. And anyway, when we were flying, he told me I could take over, and so he put his hands on it. I'm in control. Now the stick moves that far, my old warbird, you know. So I thought, oh, I'll do a gentle turn. 16 just like that. He got on the stick and he said, take it easy, I don't have the brown bag. I said, honey, you can have mine because I don't need it. But he's a good friend of mine. I did scare him. But he was a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Roy, tell me a story or two about your dad, if you would, please.
Well, my family lived in Mankato, and my dad, Roy Anderson Sr., had a cousin in South Dakota that had a American Eagle biplane powered by an OX-5 World War I engine. And his cousin taught him to fly, and my dad bought a damaged plane, the same plane, American Eagle, had been damaged in a tornado, and he and some others rebuilt it, and so he flew that plane. And I had my first ride in my mother's womb, coming back from South Dakota. And my brother, Dr. Roger, is a pilot, and his wife Marilyn are pilots also.
What'd your dad do for a living?
He was in sales work and also had a Shell gas station in Mankato. And then he ended up owning Oldwood Mobile Home Court here in Faribault.
Oh, okay. Because, you know, affording a plane is not an easy thing to do, even back in those days.
But it was a plane that was smashed up, and he was applying dope on the wing in the family home, and the colonel knows about dope. He passed out and fell against the door, and they heard him, and they couldn't open the door because he fell against it.
Now, Colonel, you
Oh,
maybe want
my.
to explain to our listeners, we're not talking about, you know, the dope that people think of today.
No, it's a compound that you paint the wings to make them firm. The wings back in those days were cloth wings, and you had to firm it and make it smooth so it was better for flying.
Ah, so what documentation do these people need to get that congressional? I mean, what does Archie need to do to get his dad recognized here?
Some of it's determined by was determined by national headquarters, the historian, and some of the people had their membership cards that they had from when they were members. Some are photos with, and some were newspaper articles that were written about the Civil Air Patrol back in those days that mentioned names of people that were there. So it was some type of documentation saying that they were in Civil Air Patrol.
And obviously, Archie, you haven't been able to find anything like that, right?
No, that's correct, yeah.
So if anybody listening might have, what was your dad's name?
Ralph Irwin Temple,
What did he do for a living?
electric orders.
Oh, well, there's still Temple Electric here in
Oh,
town.
yeah, that's me.
That's you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it used to be, now it's my son's.
You were a chip off the old block.
Yeah, now I have a grandson too that's coming up. He's about 1 now.
1 year old. Won't be long and he'll be Liz's age. 95 years young, right, Liz?
I'm only 95.
That's it. You got big plans for 100?
Pardon me?
You got big plans for when you turn 100?
Oh, I take a year at a time.
No. Well,
I'm very lucky.
that's probably.
God has been awfully good to me, and I have given programs all over the country. And it pleases me. And the reason I do is because our records were sealed for so many years that nobody knew we were flying during World War II. But I tell them,
When you go make these presentations to kids all over the country, you're going to your 31st state, Michigan next
yes,
week.
sir.
When you make these presentations, what do the kids ask you?
Well, they ask me if any of my children fly. They don't. and I was asked not to talk to flying for my children because my husband was in the service and he used to fix the aircraft and he'd see them come back in such terrible condition and he did not want my children to fly. So I never told him about it, but every time I'd see a plane, I'd go outside and look at it come overhead. I was in love with flying.
What is it about flying you enjoy so much?
I think it's the freedom. I get up there and I am in control. It's a wonderful feeling. I'm very fortunate. I have been very blessed. I love to fly airplanes.
Some people are afraid of flying, you know.
Pardon me?
Some people have a fear of flying. Obviously, you have
No,
no.
I've never been afraid. I had a few times I should have been, but I don't want to hurt the airplane.
Liz, can you tell them about Northwest Airlines?
Sure, I got that.
I got 1 minute.
Oh, anyway, I went to Northwest Airlines with all my credentials. You know, I had this. I went from a student license to a commercial rating when I got through with the service.
Sure.
So, and I went and got a seaplane rating, and I'm telling you, I had all the ratings. So I thought, sure, they'd want me in Northwest Airlines. They said, thank you very much, but we do not take women pilots. So I was a little early.
Oh,
That's okay.
I bet that didn't make you very happy, though. You were probably upset about that, weren't you?
Well, it kind of broke my heart, but they did take me in a simulator and they let me fly a 747, and I landed it beautifully 3 times. He didn't believe I could do it. So I did it 3 times. He said, yeah, I guess she can fly airplanes.
Yeah, you can fly. I better fly out of here. Thanks, folks, for coming in. Appreciate it. That concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota